Welcome back again to another episode of the Friday Council, episode 22 today. Blooming hot, eh? Gee, it's a rough one.
Deuces. Nice and cool in here, ready to go.
Yeah, we're feeling like some council time.
Yeah, I'm feeling real clear-minded.
Yeah.
Cold shower,
level-headed,
push-ups in the morning.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
Do you want to lead us what we're talking about today?
I think
Daniel?
David should.
All right.
Okay, well, yeah, it's a little murky. I think the broad subject that we're talking about is financial literacy, but we might start by talking about scamming / marketing, how there's a fine line between the two, and how to.
Well, what is the crank straight into it? What's the difference, you reckon, or if there is any, between like great marketing or a scam?
Yeah, it's a very fine line. I think great marketing, if it's backed up by like a genuine product or service, is okay. A scam, I think, is if you buy something thinking it's something and it's clearly not that. I'm not sure if that's the technical. Say, I'm trying to think of a clean, arbitrary example off the top of my head. This is not, but you say you buy something and it's meant to be a twin pack of deodorant and only comes with one stick of deodorant. That would be a scam.
Yeah.
Because it's not what it is. Now, if you buy a twin pack of deodorant that's being marketed as, this is the best deodorant in the world, but you don't think it is, that's probably just great marketing. Again,
what about those
example,
those cooler boxes, those as seen on TV cooler boxes that are like this is
example.
so nice. This will cool you down.
That's a great example because I used to sell those. They serve a purpose, but the way they are marketed, and this is where if you probably read like the fine print at the bottom, it will tell you like this is not an air conditioner. This doesn't actually reduce the temperature of the room. It only blows cold air on you. And technically, I think it actually slightly increases the temperature of the room because of the energy, the heat. But it does blow...
Cold out this way and hot out this way.
Yeah, exactly. But it does blow cold air directly on you. And so the marketing will show people like sitting directly in front of them like, oh man, like, I'm so cool now. And there's truth to that.
Yeah.
But then people think, oh, this is a cheap replacement for an air conditioner. It doesn't explicitly state that. But the way it's marketed, people are viewing it in the same vein as the air conditioner.
So that's just really good marketing.
Really good marketing.
By getting close?
As long as they haven't specifically stated, like, this will decrease the temperature of the room or something like that, which would be a lie.
Yeah. There's a kind of like a trend with infomercials where they kind of... you were talking about that, but like an example when you have all those fitness machines.
Really great example.
Yeah, they have like the people with the washboard abs.
So the way those are marketed is they'll tell you, oh, you do this for 30 days, and then in the fine print it will say, as long as you also follow like a strict
dietary plan.
So again, they're not lying to you, but yes, they're on that borderline with being simplistic. Humans, we want easy solutions. They say, oh, I can just stand on this and I can keep eating McDonald's all day, every day.
Magic
but,
pill.
Yeah, it says, but also you have to do this, this, and this in the fine print.
It brings to mind the like when your everyday girl, mid-20s or younger, will do a transformation. Like they've been in the gym for like 6 months and they want to show off. Like they want to, comes across as advertising yourself a little bit, especially when you're single, which is fair enough. That's what social media is for, I reckon. But they do like a before shot where they'll slout. I mean, this is what that happens on TV as well.
Bad lighting.
Yeah, bad lighting, and then oftentimes Taylor will point it out, and they'll just be the after shot will be like barely any weight loss or muscle gain, but they've just like tanned themselves and are smiling, and it's like a real nice picture. And so they've completely thrown all the scientific method out the window there, and I don't know who's falling for that, but
I think a lot of people are, because if you're just
simps are.
If you're just getting into a fitness journey, you probably don't know like the requirements of what's actually required to
One of the I had a quick look at some stats for the for scamming, and the after investments in terms of category of the most popular scams, investment scams were number one in terms of like amount of money.
Everyone wants to get rich quick.
Yeah, in terms of the amount of money, but the second most common category for being scammed was in the dating and romance category.
Yeah,
So-
I see
Wants
that
sex,
happening.
So
especially
yeah,
guys.
so yeah, as simps, it's got to be guys. It's got to be pretty much all
100%.
guys.
Yeah,
Let's
For
be
the
honest.
most, yeah. Well,
We've-
to be fair, there's that not newish, but that Tinder swindler, the documentary that was on Netflix with the a guy who would claim. I mean, I watched it. I can't remember exactly what happened, but effectively he would run like a pyramid scheme where he would entice women into paying him money so he'd keep up this lavish lifestyle, and they would max out. Like he'd ask them to. Like take out loans on cards or sign up for credit cards, and then he would use that money for the next later. He would just keep recycling, and I mean, it's worth checking it out. I think it's called the Tinder swindler. That's just a brief summary, but it can happen for men and women.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's majority is going to be
majority
dudes simping,
yeah.
and I mean, OnlyFans kind of satisfies that in a legitimate way, but I think that's always going to be the case in terms of guys getting swindled, being a sucker. And I think this is a good other point, is that in terms of financial literacy, it pays to not be just go with your intuition and your base instincts, because oftentimes they will trip you up, especially when it comes to money and numbers and stuff. And I know you have probably a few examples of where specific examples in like trading and stocks where it's counterintuitively making certain actions is better for you than otherwise.
I think as well, it's easy to say in hindsight, but obviously coming out of the pandemic, it seemed like, and investing in stocks anyway, crypto as well, that it was all just constantly, it only goes up, and then the last year or so we've really, you've thinned out a lot of these speculation or speculative people and things like NFTs and unfortunately some
shit
people
coins.
people get burned by that sort of thing, but to have I'd say productive economy or marketplace, you need to flush out a lot of that crap.
Yeah, I think it's the classic case of if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So everyone wants to get rich quickly. There are very few, if any, legitimate get rich quick schemes. So that's that people are attracted to, I can double my money in a year in whatever, this NFT or whatever, rather than a genuine wealth building platform. Or I can put my money in the S&P 500 and in 10 or 20 years it will maybe double if I'm lucky, sort of thing, over a long period of time. So I think, if something seems too good to be true, it almost certainly is. Now there can be exceptions to that, but make sure, I guess, someone can provide some form of evidence, back it up, whether it be, with some sort of legal contract or just some evidence, something to back it up.
I was going to say, in terms of that, a good, not always foolproof, but a way to see if you're being scammed is to find, are these people trying to sell you like a course or something you need to sign up, or is it just
the courses is a pretty blurry line between scam
very,
and great
very,
marketing.
They're just clever. They could just be clever salesmen.
I think in pretty much all cases, courses aren't technically a scam because they are selling you a product. It's just overhyped. They'll tell you this is how much you can make money, or this is how much money you can make, but that's a best case scenario. If you put in 80 hours a week and really work hard at it and persist at it, they'll show you their success stories, but that's it though. It will be 1% of all clients. 99% of all clients will not get the results. So and again, they'll have disclaimers there and fine print and stuff like that, but
I think just like you guys were saying before we move on, talking about the crypto brings to mind the importance of understanding how things work, like understanding how a mortgage actually works, and so with crypto, how it's especially the shit coins, the classic, none of the not the main three or whatever, where they get just pumped up and dumped, and so someone's losing there, or that's where this course is. So not understanding that, it's player versus player is top G, you would say, in crypto. So, someone's losing there. It's not a real tangible thing. So you're only making money off other people who are bidding it up. And yeah, I forgot what I was going to say after
It's
that.
all good.
Yeah.
She knows.
There's and this is a topic for another day. But yeah, there are ways to, if you have a certain set of skills, that you can ride those bubbles, whatever you want to call it, to a certain extent. But that's it. You have to know how to get on the train and how to get off the train. Whereas most people don't. They hop on the train and then they like, well, yeah, I'm all in on crypto, and then they stay in it, and that's it. They ride the train or the roller coaster all the way back down. As say that's. Yeah.
So would a good thing to segue off that maybe talk about risk and risk management and how ways to like minimize your risk.
Yeah, well, I think again for the average person, because most people just aren't going to have the time, the dedication to learn how to manage risks themselves. So I think that like when it comes to like investing, the most sensible advice for the average person, unless you are really willing to dig deep, is just put your money in index funds, and within reason. I'll still put it in only what you can.
Like we mentioned before, just having money in savings is a choice as well. And it's not the smartest.
Yeah, and of course,
Most
disclaimer, that's
way.
not financial advice.
Well, it is smart. I would do. It's smart. It's just super low risk.
That's what I would do
reward.
if I haven't dug deeper and understood how maybe things can be done a little bit better.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always prescribed the idea in terms of investing, or even kind of things of like speculation. It's always be prepared to think like this is money that could just be lost completely. So if it's like life changing to you, or you desperately need this money, I don't know, some people blow out accounts, like investing accounts or trading accounts, but then you need the money in the next 2 years for a house deposit. Well, you probably shouldn't be
That's good
using
advice.
that money in the first place. Where if it's like, I don't know, you've got $100 just lying there and you feel like chucking it in a random thing, or even putting a bet down on sports, like, well, you could lose this money, but life still goes on regardless.
That's a good point. I agree, but then it also brings to mind survivorship bias. We often hear stories of people in successful businesses where they're like, "I put everything in this. Like, if this failed, I was screwed." And the successful ones that you hear from, and there must be a million that don't.
Yeah, exactly.
But you also, it comes. You have to be as informed as you possibly can before you make the risk. And like you said, it is risk management, but I think understanding things at like on first principles level. So like understanding that crypto, how it works like that. So someone's losing when a crypto like 1,000% and then bombs. Like there's only the same amount of money that's been put in by like 1,000 regular people when someone's selling the course who's pumped it up and cashed out. So it's really important to understand how things work, how things actually work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like a mortgage is probably probably the most complicated like monetary system that most regular people will be put into, I guess. And it's not super difficult, but it's not
and I
taught.
think that, and even like KiwiSaver is a good example. Like I've talked to a few people my age or old like workmates who don't quite like understand how KiwiSaver works. Like you obviously, it's taking a portion of your percentage of your income, and then your employer will match that. And then obviously, like most people know, you get that government contribution, but they don't really understand. Like all they say is, "Oh, it's gone up today. It's gone down today." Like they don't understand the ins and outs and what is actually
it's a
happening.
managed fund.
Yeah, it's like, man, yeah. I feel
it's just another managed. It's just a compulsory managed fund, right?
Yeah,
that's why you can choose.
You can opt out of it. I mean,
you can opt out. It's not forced by law, but it's just another managed fund.
Yeah.
Like you can choose from however many thousands of managed funds to put your money in around the world.
Yeah, and
that's why there's different services providers.
Yeah, and I think on that note, a little bit of a tangent, but we've discussed this before. How it seems like a lot of people, getting upset when companies are doing well, record profits and stuff. But most of those people will be in KiwiSaver and they want their KiwiSaver to go up. So that's what I mean. If all these companies start doing poorly, your retirement fund isn't going to do very
Yeah.
well, and then you're going to be stuffed as well. And again, that's just another case of not understanding how things really work.
Yeah, not being literate.
It's not just this magical
financially.
fund that just goes up by a certain amount every year. It requires underlying companies or assets that are actually performing well. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just an area where I spend a bit of time researching, but the general consensus with people who invest in a investment property, or it was kind of like the Kiwi dream. You'd own your own home and then you'd save up to buy another investment property, which would, I guess, help fund your retirement, whatever. But the consensus is like, why do these people, they're all about maximizing profits and whatnot, but it's not entirely all about that. Like, if if you're a good landlord, you can provide good quality housing. There will be some real scumbags out there, but I think everyone who has an investment property kind of gets lumped into the same group.
And the bottom line is, there's a need to have rental properties. Not everyone wants to buy a house at a certain time in their life, and not everyone can buy a house. So we think like real obvious example being like a university student. Like it's not realistic for a university student to buy a house. They live in flat, as we know. Student flats are notorious.
I've been to a few of those in our time.
Yeah, so there's a need to have rental properties where people tend to think of it. Oh, it's just like this useless thing. It stops
people hoarding.
Yeah, it stops other people from buying houses. But it's like no, you need because there's a need.
It comes to mind that the opposition to that and what comes to my mind is just that you, from oftentimes situations outside of your control, just pure luck, like generational luck, what your grandparents did to set your parents up and therefore set you up real well. You can leverage that and use that to buy investment properties, whereas someone who was just born in different circumstance doesn't have that opportunity. That's what other people would say. So
so that life's not fair. If you're born
that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, if you're born into a great family, whether that be monetary and or educational, that can teach you the ways to get ahead, then that's lucky. If you're born into a shit household or just even an average household, and your parents did everything by the book and didn't take risks, or shrewd and risks, calculated risks to try and get ahead, then it's unfair. So it's one of the best pieces of advice is accepting that life is unfair, and take it on the chin. And
I suppose I wonder if many people decide not to invest in property for that, like they're being altruistic, take an L for themselves,
maybe.
But you're not really. No.
Or I think that's probably a cope. I think a lot of people, and I hear that with my parents, that's a cope. And they said, oh, we didn't invest in property because it comes with all these headaches and that's just your way of making yourself feel better that you didn't do that, because that comes with a slew of
would have been a good
benefits.
idea.
Exactly. So I think for most people, it's a cope. It's like I'd say play Monopoly, and it's a great. You get to see human nature on display. Everyone wants taxes and regulations when they're losing. When they're winning,
you want your dividend payouts. You want to collect the rent.
So that's it. I think it would be a very small portion of the population that genuinely is like, no, because this is not a good thing, and I only want what I need, and I don't
a lot of people vocal about it don't own investment properties themselves, obviously, and probably don't own a home, and that
I think they would love to.
Yeah, I know I brought up investment properties, but even in terms of just owning your first home, every now and again it seems there's an article that will pop up about a young 23-year-old who worked numerous hours, saved up a deposit, and bought their home. And you just read the comment section. It's just pure hatred and oh, well, this person probably had parents that helped them. He lived at home, and it's like, yes, everyone has different circumstances, and some people get it slightly easier than others. Others will have to work really hard. They don't have the luxury of living with their parents. They have to rent or but at the same time, it's real. It doesn't help yourself just feeling
it doesn't
animosity
it's
or
self-own.
hatred.
It's an L.
It's like you're
It's definitely
taking
an
the L on yourself, and you kind of need to shift your mindset. Where it's like, if I don't put the work in, I'm not getting anything done.
Yeah.
I remember there's a I must have been maybe like 2021, and I had maxed out like an overdraft. I think that it was 2,000. I was like on the brink, borderline, because I was just stupid. And I was, man, how am I going to get myself out of this hole? And I just you just have to change your mindset. It's like, I'm going to have to live a poverty like mindset for the next 3 or 4 months. I eventually got my way out, and then, I mean, it's easy to say now, but 8 years, 8 years down the track, just bought my first home. Things take time.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't happen overnight.
Exactly.
And to realize there's just different life stages. If you're a teenager, you're not going to have as much money as someone who's been in the market or been working for 10 years. Just over time, and the decisions that you make, obviously goals you have to set, you have to be future thinking. It's easy to say I want to do this and that, but if you really want to do this and that, and in terms of financial literacy, well, you do have to either crunch the numbers, do the spreadsheet, and figure out what do I actually need to do to get to this point. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. Sorry, yeah, it's a bit.
Move on.
I think that's a good point. A really good point is that I think it's a quote out there. Most people underestimate what they can do in 1 year. Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. So that's it. If you're in debt or whatever, a bad financial position, you're probably not going to be able to get out of that position in 1 year. But over the course of just keep making those small right decisions, after 10 years of doing that, you'll be in a way better place. So good things generally take time. And with housing, a little bit of tangent and maybe a little bit controversial, but I personally think this is a misconception that I get seen thrown around quite a bit now, that people say housing is a human right. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it'd be great if everyone has a house to live in, but if you think about it, I think I've said this before, and might be a little bit hard to get your head around, a little bit hard to explain, but the natural state of the world is nothing, it's poverty. So that's when we started as hunter-gatherers. Someone has to build these houses, and they're not cheap to build for others to live in them. They're not just there by default, and that's what I mean. So if we cut down everyone, all these landlords, all these speculators that own 10 houses, now technically the houses would still exist, but let's say we never let them do that in the first place, then those houses wouldn't exist at all. So that's what I mean. Houses aren't there by default. They're not part of the natural order. You're living in mud huts, and even those you have to build, or living in a cave. That's the natural state of the world. It's a human right to live in a cave.
Yeah, I like also extending that out to thinking of another human necessity, so shelter, house being just shelter being one of them. Also food being another. Effectively, that's what we got. A duopoly of food.
No, Costco's here.
Costco's here now. So, but there's very few, and so they're effectively doing the same thing, compared to an investor, a greedy property investor who's hoarding heaps of houses and renting them out and being a scummy landlord. It's effectively what the supermarkets are doing, aren't they? They're hoarding all the food and then selling, and then...
Yeah, I think it's great. I
agree with you.
Before, it's greatly misunderstood.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's
if the supermarkets were ripping us off, which they aren't, I know that's a real common one at the moment, then there's nothing to stop other people, as Costco have done, to come in. If the margins were massive, they were doubling their money on food.
Same applies for housing. Is what you're saying.
Everyone will be starting supermarkets, but the reality is that the margins of the supermarkets are 5%. It's not an easy business to get into, and people say, it's because they control the supply lines, the logistics, whatever it's called. But that's what I mean. If the margins were so high, then it would be easy for someone else to come in, and they wouldn't have quite the margins because they didn't have the access to the great supply, but there would be still enough margin for area they can come and make profits. But supermarkets are not ripping us off.
I think, but the same logic applies into housing, where you can't be outrageous. You can't be charging $100 more rent than everywhere else. Rent's slightly different because
rent, it's like anything. It's what someone's willing to pay for it. So this is what people, again, this is another maybe hard concept to get your head around. Everyone says that houses are overpriced in New Zealand and rent's expensive, but technically it's not, because that's what people are willing to pay for it. If someone is willing to pay money for something, it's not overpriced. Something is overpriced if someone doesn't buy it. Oh, I want $1 million for this house, and they're only getting offers for 800,000. That's overpriced. If someone's willing to pay $1 million for it, it's not overpriced. Yeah, does it suck that if you don't own a house like me, it doesn't, that prices keep going up? Yeah, it sucks being on the outside, but that's because there are people in positions to buy houses and are willing to buy houses for those prices. So they're not overpriced. If they're overpriced, they wouldn't sell. And sure, we are starting to reach that point where houses have become overpriced because people are no longer, in many instances, willing to pay the prices that they were willing to pay a year or two ago. But that's it. All markets will self-correct. If something at the supermarket, and sure, I guess you could argue when it comes to food, it's sort of murky because you have to eat food. But if we think of non-essential foods like Coke and stuff like that, if it was too expensive, people just wouldn't buy it. So if someone is willing, and more than one person is willing to buy something for the price it is, that's the price it's worth, essentially.
Yeah, so that's true. People just get, understandably as well, there's not, like what you said, life isn't fair. I think people just get like, I don't know what the word is, kind of angry that they're being left out, and like prices are being by people who can afford it.
So, and matched. That's what I mean. So that's where you have to have like a paradigm shift, where you have to realize, like, because the way you would hear like media headlines and just chatter around society today, you would think that only like 10% of the population owns a house, where it's far greater than that. Like most people, well,
about 3/4. Isn't it?
I don't know, but most people either own a house or live in a house. I don't know. I would have to back it up numbers, but like it's not a minority, or certainly it's not a large minority of people who own homes in New Zealand. So yeah, if you're on like minimum wage or something, or you're just like 20 and you're like, oh, like I should be able to buy a house, you have to realize that no, like there's these people who are 10 years ahead of you who are in these high paying jobs. There's enough of them that drives these prices up. That means there are enough people who are doing well enough, better than you, who can buy these houses. So you have to kind of have that paradigm shift and say, oh geez, like I guess I need to do better. And I know it sounds harsh.
That's true, and I also like to think about like you don't know, no 20-year-old expects to buy land in like a big city. No, like in like Melbourne City. It's like there's a point where
that's it. I think people's expectations are way too high. People want to buy brand new houses in Prestons as their first home. To do that, it's not impossible, but you're going to have to work way harder than the average person to get to that point. If you want to buy a brand new house in a nice subdivision, it's more realistic to say, oh, I'll be happy to buy a little townhouse or a granny flat as my first house in an average suburb, just to get on the market, and then in 5 years or 10 years time, after more hard work, wealth accumulation, or reevaluate. And then like that's exactly what I know my parents did that. And I know other members in my family did that. One of my sisters, they used to live in a tiny little, I don't know if it'd even be considered a townhouse. It was tiny. Maybe it's technically a tiny townhouse, but it's tiny. It was somewhere in like Edgware, very, very like small house. And they lived in there for, I don't know how long, probably like approximately 8 years or something maybe. And then they kept working, building their wealth. And then they bought a new house built a new house in Preston's Park. But a lot of people want that beautiful house as the first house.
I know an example of someone who they had 2 kids and lived in a shipping container on the back of I think it was a garage mechanic for like 3 years while they saved enough money to build up and they have, to be fair, they've got a really nice house, awesome. Nice piece of land, but they made those sacrifices to get to that point.
And that's where, again, I don't know if I'm, describing it well enough, because that is a fairly, I think it even might be, it's probably not technically a unique thought, but it's not something that's commonly discussed. I say that default state of nature, the world order, is nothingness. I say start looking at things through an opposite lens and be like, well, geez, isn't it great that I get to live in the shipping container and I don't have to live in a cave anymore like my ancestors did 1,000 or however many thousand years ago. I didn't have to live in a mud hut. It's way better. It's not as great as my parents in their nice new house, but it's still way better to running electricity, running water, all that sort of stuff. It's still an incredibly privileged position compared to how a lot of people throughout history and still in some parts of the world and in small instances in New Zealand are still living, on the streets and stuff like that. And obviously, if we talk third world countries, they are living in mud huts and stuff like that, and a large portion of the population. So that's what I mean. That default state of the world is brutal poverty, and most people, I think, just take for granted what they have, and I guess it's
All
human nature.
That's a great point.
I think it's a way better way of looking at the world. Even if you disagree with me and say, "Oh, that's BS," like we're advanced enough that we should be able to like make everyone live happy lives. Well, it's just not the way it is, and I still think it's a more empowering mentality to have, even if you think it's a harsh one and you wish it were better. So by all means, then you strive to make the world a better place. Nothing wrong with that. As I say, it's a nice ideal to have everyone living in beautiful houses, but we're not there yet. But I still think if you come from that place of
gratitude,
gratitude, and accepting that it's not bad to have something compared to what you would have had 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. Maybe even longer than that. I really don't know my human timeline. I don't know when people were living in caves. But, even compared to 200 years ago, most people, I'd say at least 90, probably even way higher than that, are living much better lives than.
Good point. I wanted to bring up and ask you guys, so in there, when I was looking at the stats, in terms of a scam, we'll get to financial literacy, but this is more about scamming. And we'll come to no surprise that over 65s were the most... with a section of the population that were most scammed. And I think it was like 20-year blocks or 10-year blocks, and then 65 plus is one block. And they were by far the most scammed. Do you guys reckon this is just a demographic trend that is right now with computers, or that we will be eating our own shoes when we are 65 plus and all these new scams and
I don't understand this one at all.
All these holograms are coming to our door and being like, "Hello, sir," and we're like, and young kids are like, "It's a hologram, you idiot."
We briefly discussed this before the pod, and as I said, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I've heard you say before, you talk about how wise old people are, and you want to like absorb their wisdom and stuff like that. And then you look at that's it. The stats will tell you again. It won't be all people over this age, of course, but there's a significant portion of over 65s, these elderly people who should be the wisest because they have such an accumulation of knowledge, should have, and yet they're the most vulnerable to these scams and stuff. I don't understand it at all. Now, I guess I understand bits of it. You could say, oh, well, they become frail and vulnerable. And that's true to an extent. And obviously, if you have like dementia or something, it would make sense.
I imagine that it's all technology based.
Oh,
so
yeah.
what do
I
you
just wanted
say
to say, my first thought was, you mentioned like computers. I think you could make a case for that point.
What point?
Like, a lot of people even to the same age didn't grow up with computers.
I
and
think
they
it's
didn't.
a stupid excuse.
But then at the same point, I know a lot of people who, they've adapted and evolved because they want to be able to remain close and communicate with family around the world. I think a lot of it, and I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone over 65, but from my outside perspective, there's like no willingness to learn.
Yeah.
And I found that as an example working in retail when they started implementing in self-service machines. Because for like most people like us, it's just a benefit. Like, it's quicker, you don't have to wait in line.
It's a garbage interaction.
Yeah,
anyway.
it's like, it's all just mundane. You go in, scan your things, done, in and out. A lot of people, no, I refuse to use that. It's taking away jobs, blah, 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 blah. And, for some, yes, taking away jobs, but in some companies, and the one I worked in, which, I mean, take it as you will, but it moved people out of those roles to be able to do other things, because realistically you have 8 people, 10 people running at checkouts. It's a lot of money that you could be using in other factors and growing. I mean, I'm not a huge businessman, but yeah, it's just there's no willingness to learn, and so I mean, I don't want to throw my parents under the bus, but like living at home, whenever there was something that needed to be come up, it was like, hey, they come in asking for my help before actually doing the research themselves. My dad would, oh, when is the next All Blacks game on? It's like, well, you can look it up on Google. You don't have to come to me, get me to do it for you. It's just
I'm just gonna Google it.
You just Google it, just straight into it.
I agree. Like that's a great point, but I don't think that's that's a lack of willingness to learn. But I don't think that explains why elderly seem to get scammed more than often, because you don't need to learn. Like you say, oh, is it a technology thing? Well, the technology is just a medium. A scam is a scam, whether it's in person, on the phone, on the computer.
Yeah, the nature of a scam has been the same forever.
Exactly. Arguably, it should be easier to resist if it's on a computer rather than someone knocking on your door. Yeah. And I can somewhat understand. I've seen like some of those shows where they expose like scammer tradies. Who come like on the door real aggressive,
sniffing panties.
Yeah, they get real aggressive with old people and essentially scare them into it. Yeah, kind of understand that. Yeah,
there'd be more coercion. Than,
but on a computer, like you just ignore the email, you ignore the pop up.
Yeah,
and as I say, it's this classic. Oh, the case of if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
I think, like I mentioned before, like understanding how something is working at first principle. I mean, we don't understand how a computer works to that detail, but I think it just goes to show that a lot of them, it's a result of them not being open-minded and willing to learn, and as a result of that, they don't understand like computers at all. So basically their relationship with technology is just doing what it's showing you, and clicking OK. That's like the extent of how they know to work a computer. So they don't actually know. Yeah, and then so when a scam comes up with the same thing, their level of depth of knowledge about it is just that I click OK to make this box go away. Yeah. That's as far. It's like the most they understand about computers. So.
That probably like.
But it's a choice.
Yeah, there's probably a multitude of factors, and I do think probably one of the larger factors does tie into this like unwillingness to learn. I think this point where they reach like, and it probably happens way earlier in life for most people, like, oh, this is what I know and I don't need to know anymore, and just like go on autopilot. And I think that's probably, this is not scientific of course, but that's probably neurodegenerative. Like probably once you just stop like learning stuff, your brain probably starts decaying, and so if your brain is decayed, you're probably more susceptible to scams and stuff. Again, that's not scientific. That could be complete bro science.
Makes bro science sense.
My theory. Yeah, that's my theory.
What does Andrew Huberman have to say?
Yeah. But I just think the sagest piece of advice, and this is sage advice no matter your age, if you get an email or a call or whatever, a letter in the mail, any sort of seemingly like a deal, as say, if too good to be true, but even if they try and make it really like realistic, like it's a company, like the shipping company, oh, your parcel's arrived, you have a customs fee, there's no harm in just directly calling the company and saying, I just got this message, is this accurate? Because if you're directly calling the company, not the company calling you, or the supposed company calling you, you're actually speaking to the company, and they will tell you the truth. So that's the say. There's just that you lose a minute or two of your time, maybe 10 if there's a wedding, but do that every time, and it doesn't matter how like minor the inconvenience is. Just do that. Yeah, do that if you have.
That is the strat.
Scammers anyway have to become more like lucrative in how they operate, because over time, becomes more well known what the scams are.
Yeah, there's an argument.
There's
an argument against that where they intentionally make them super stupid because it'll filter out intelligent people who won't fall for it, and only the stupidest will fall. That's the spelling mistakes and stuff.
I almost fell for a scam, but it was real fishy. Like I was trying to sell something on Marketplace about a month ago, and guy, hey, can you ship this to me in Tauranga? Okay, sure, I can do that for you. It's like, sweet. What's your email address? I'll put money through PayPal. As soon as he said that, it popped in my head, like, this isn't all right. Most people generally do bank account, whatever. I was like, okay, we'll see what he has to say. Sends me an email, and was like, straight away I knew it was a phishing scam. Because it didn't show up like straight away. He's like, then he started messaging me and calling me on Messenger, like, hey, you should have got the email. Check in your, it might have come through your, what do you call it? Like,
filter.
Yeah, filter through into your junk mail.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, why is it going through my junk? But he was very persistent. Like, he'd just keep constantly desperate. And like,
I think the exact same thing happened to Taylor.
it's pretty bad. Yeah, I had to. I was just like, nah, I'm gonna just block this guy. It's too true. And if any money comes through, then I'll refund it back to him.
Yeah,
go about my day.
That's exactly what happened to Taylor. Actually, I think might be the same guy.
And
probably is.
Marketplace is rife with scams. You see it on those stupid Christchurch buy sell pages all the
Yeah.
time. Oh, just get this and that. And again, another sage piece of advice for you. Personally, I just would avoid those marketplaces like the plague. Now, I appreciate you can get some good deals on there.
Yeah.
So if you
That's
are
the
going
price you pay.
if you are going to operate on those marketplaces, make sure that you only ever do transactions in person. You never do anything over the internet. I think would be sage advice. But my sagest advice would be use TradeMe. You might have to pay a little bit of a higher price, but you, as long as you pay through Ping or Afterpay, you are protected by them. If there's a scam, they don't send the item, you get your money back.
It's true.
100%. There's no risk in it for you. So that is worth, to me, for peace of mind, paying a little bit more to have that. And that's what I mean. You get these cheapos, which you guys might be. We're like, oh, I'm not selling on TradeMe because I have to pay like a 8% fee. I'll sell it on Marketplace.
It depends. It does depend on what the dollar value of what you're paying.
And as I say, like, if you are going to operate on those marketplaces to buy a washing machine or whatever, someone's just getting rid of their washing machine for $10. Yeah, just do the trend. So I guess that would be low risk, but just do it in person.
I think
do it in person.
The general thing with marketplace, and a lot of people have Facebook anyway, is you can kind of view their profile before you
get a feel for them.
You get, like, as bad as that sounds,
No,
it's
I
like
know
your
exactly
profile.
what you
You're
mean.
profiling them before you grab the item, and obviously, like, if you've got a lot of photos or mutual friends, even, or it's like, well, the likelihood of you like that happening.
Yeah, that's a skill as well. You get to determine whether they're just really foreign and can't speak English well, or if it's a scam account.
Or if they've got like a real, like a photo of a car. I was generalizing.
I liken Marketplace it to, it's like, it's the next level up from the black market.
Yeah.
It's the Wild West to an extent. It's hot. I don't think there's any regulation on it. If there is, there's very minimal regulation on it. So it's going to be ripe for scammers. Whereas say like TradeMe or any other like eBay, Amazon, any other marketplace, which even Mighty Ape has a marketplace now. It's highly regulated, and this is where regulations can be a good thing, right? And yeah, there's layers of protection, so that filters out. There's still some scammers on TradeMe, but they'll quickly get weeded out, and you're protected as long as you don't, as long as you pay by Ping. So that can be a red flag if someone's not offering Ping. Again, it's not a 100% red flag, but if you don't use Ping, which is TradeMe's payment system, you're not protected. So if you pay by bank deposit, you're not protected. So
yeah. I think my opinion on the marketplace is that it's so frictionless. It could be argued that it's too frictionless, where you can swamped with messages, heaps of messages, and so. But the payoff is that it's so much easier than it's like quicker, easier than TradeMe.
I totally disagree, but that's just me personally. I hate that idea of having to deal with people. It's in a much more
so frictionless. It's just
but I was saying I don't like that. I'm like where you have to like message someone and it feels like it's a personal conversation. I like with TradeMe. It's like
purely transactional.
Exactly.
Based.
Boom. You get an email, and not in all cases, but if they're a shrewd seller, especially if they're a professional seller, you've either paid by Ping, so you don't need to email them at all.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's a good point.
The transaction is just done as soon as you're paid.
You don't even have to email them.
Exactly.
Yourself,
So to me, TradeMe is way more frictionless. But if you're dealing with a non-professional, in a lot of cases, you'll still get an email where the bank details are there automatically, and then you pay. If they're not a shrewd seller, then you have to email them and ask. But yeah, it's much more professional.
Yeah,
I don't like that idea of messaging this person on their person with my personal profile and their personal profile. And you do see like there's so many creeps that hang out on those pages, and you see it, especially if females, they post on those pages all the time. Oh, this dude's like stalking me now. He like used a business transaction or a supposed business transaction to essentially try and lure me in to
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Good
I
point,
mean, there's obviously benefits to it and negatives.
Yeah.
Like, I think I am the same boat with Daniel. It's like, depending on the item, generally, if you're trying to sell something on Marketplace, you just want off with it. You're just trying to make a quick buck.
I see
There
what
are
you're saying.
people that try and sell it for high price, but it's more like, yep, I just want this gone. Mark it down, done. Whereas Trade Me often
You got to wait a week.
sometimes,
you could do a $1 reserve, but
depending on the item, it can take a bit of time.
if you just want it gone, you can $1 reserve it. Sure, you have to still wait. I mean, you could set your auction for 2 days, but probably best to do it for a week. You just have to wait. Yeah, I guess everyone's different. For me, I
but have a mixture of both probably.
And that's fair enough. And I know you can. I know, one of my sisters is often on those groups and also community pages.
Yeah,
and you can probably pick up occasionally. Yeah, there's a high probability of picking up a good deal on something because that's it. There are just these people who are just like, oh, I'll just get rid of it. And
one man's trash is another man's treasure.
But yeah, I guess for me, I'm not much of a bargain hunter, so I prefer just that ease of transaction, which in most cases, as say you can see on Trade Me, if someone offers ping before you buy, and you're like, boom, I know I can just instantly pay for this, no email, and it'll be sent
you can
out.
Look at their reviews, what the percentage,
So that's me personally. As I say, it's purely personal. I can see that there are merits to Marketplace, but yeah, I think one of the costs of the Marketplace being cheap essentially is that it will come with the lowest common denominator. It will come with the scammers that they will know that is the best, one of their best places for running this. It's almost, I say, completely unregulated.
Should we get back to financial literacy in general?
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything to? Well, kicking it off.
Of financial literacy.
It is.
Like, if you're going to operate
That's
on
why we're
these
talking about scams. They're very interlinked.
Unregulated marketplaces, whether it be Trade Me or some other.
You could, in theory, you could define financial literacy as anything to do with money being involved and the knowledge of said money.
Yeah, at its first principle.
No, that's fair.
How what do you guys reckon about like trends, financially literate, like population trend, or for us, any stories or anything?
Well, one thing I pick up is
just how important is it?
It seems, and this is kind of related. I don't want to go on a tangent, but at least in the past few years, there's been a big push for like self-help and well-being. And, especially in young males, we should say.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And so I think that, I would like to see it happen for, the same with money. But it seems, particularly in New Zealand and maybe Australia and the UK, talking about money can be quite taboo. Whereas in the US, a lot of people just, hey, I'm making 100K this year. I'm aiming for $1 million this year. Yeah. It's like, when you talk about money here, a lot of people don't want to talk about it, and we might have exceptions with certain friends.
I find that weird,
but it's strange. It's like, hey, it'd be cool to be like, hey, you bought a deposit, like you got a deposit on your house. Can you explain to me how you did that? And or it's just, I think when you add dollars and cents to it, it really adds a new element.
I think because again, this ties in to that crab in the bucket mentality that I think I mentioned last week. If you say like, I just bought a house, or you say like, I'm earning this, or I have this amount saved or whatever, and the other person doesn't have anywhere near as much as you, then they're like, this guy, all this money, but it's bullshit, give some to me sort of thing. That's the classic case of like lotto winners, right? Is that all of a sudden all these family members expect you, or friends, again, generalizing here, but it's very common for a whole bunch of people to come out of the woodwork and be like, you're so lucky, like, so give me like the
same with athletes that
really
make
common.
it.
You mentioned that before.
It's that crab in the bucket mentality really comes out. I think a lot of people, rather than being like, well, that's awesome, you're doing so well, that's like,
keep going.
And that's like an inspiration for me to do better, to learn new things, whatever it is.
It's inspiration for me to win the lotto.
Not in the case of the lotto, but if someone's told you that they've just got like a new job at a tech company earning 120K, and you're still working at the factory on 60K, you're like, man, maybe I should learn coding in my spare time.
Maybe I can up my financial literacy.
That's so cool to see that you can do it, and I've known you for 10 years. We're not that different, you're not in a complete different ballpark to me. If you can do it, I can do it. I'm stoked for you, and you're an inspiration to me. No, they're like, oh, this guy's working in an office
Cope.
now.
Cope.
Yeah, like
Cope.
it's not a real job. He just sits around in his office all day. That's a classic.
Yeah,
cope
or
with,
like,
office jobs.
he doesn't have any kids. He's got extra time he can put into that.
All the excuses will come out of the woodwork. And that's generalizing. There will be some people who
it's part of the human condition.
It is, and it's tough. And I
yeah,
think that
it's
is a default
frustrating.
mode that we all have an envy in us, but it can be overridden to a certain extent. You might have an initial burst of envy, but then you can rationalize with that. And even if you want to twist it, and this is a concept that I've seen thrown around a bit more recently, is like using the idea of like negative motivation. So it can be like what you don't want to be. I don't want to be a lazy slob living with my parents on the benefit, whatever you want to. Yeah, using the opposite. So and this would be a slight variation of that, but you can be like, oh, this guy, I want to do better than him. I see. Use it as fuel. Again, it might not be the most healthy, but it can work.
It can work for some. A lot of people can just get into their head and just completely like take them apart at the seams. I think I have personally have a mixture of that. Like, without giving away a lot of secrets as to what I want to achieve, because we're talking about suffering in silence. But yeah, generally, like if you're wanting to make huge changes to your life and your lifestyle, you kind of have to look at it from a different perspective. So I'll use another example, like someone who may be like morbidly obese, for example, it's like, well, I don't want to have that struggle when I'm 50 or whatever, so I'm gonna have to put in the work to do this now. Like, or maybe an example would be like, I want to be able to play with my kids, when they become teenagers, and it's like that's a good way to look at it. Like, as we get older, you notice like your body slowly like deteriorating. But man, like my teenagers wanting to learn cricket or something, well, someone's got to be able to bowl the balls to him, or throw a baseball ball and play catch or whatever. It's like,
for
you're
sure.
gonna have to change your mindset.
You want to look after your space suit that you've been given. You only get one body.
The way you'd flip that to use that as negative motivation is you're like, I don't want to be 50 with diabetes and a mobility scooter, and that again, it's
so you're
different
going
for everyone.
full like this is the very worst
it's
case
just
scenario.
that can be potentially more motivating than the opposite, where you're like, oh yeah, I want this beautiful lifestyle playing in the park with the kids. If you flip and be like, I don't want to be this obese diabetic stuck in a wheelchair, whatever it is, and that could be like, wow, geez, that's so scary. And that scary, the scariness of thinking how it could end up. Another case would be like, if you drink a lot of alcohol, I don't want to end up with liver cirrhosis or smoking cancer or something. Like, that's a scary thought, and perhaps the scariness of that thought is more driving to you, gives you more drive than thinking, oh, I don't want to smoke because I want to not smell. I know that would still be another. Yeah, but like, oh,
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I think it would depend on the person. You need to recognize what one works better for you.
And it can flip as well. You might use the negative motivation to start off with, and then at some point, once you're on a roll, you can flip it, or you can use a combination of both. I think I've heard it from multiple people, but I think it might have even been Andrew Huberman. I was listening to him the other day when he was like talking about how he got started with his career in science and all that, and he like woke up one day, he was like doing nothing with his life, and he sort of used that. He's like, geez, like this is terrible, and this is how I'm going to end up if I don't make drastic change, and use that as fuel. And you might use that as your fuel for the first year, and then once you've leveled up, you can again, just as I say, you can use.
I get it.
Use it here and there, whatever.
I get your point. It's good to have in the toolbox.
Exactly.
I wanted
to then you can translate that in terms of like financial literacy. Here we're kind of lucky in New Zealand. We have the safety net of like your healthcare is generally provided for, but if you're wanting to bypass like waiting lists, for example, you need private healthcare. Yeah. So it's like, hey, I mean, I don't want to have to. If I need a kidney transplant or whatever, I don't have to wait for months and months. Well,
you get
okay.
If it's something,
sorry, that's a poor example, but
because if it is something, it'll be more if you have like, I think your dad had something where he like
and
it's not like life threatening, but it's still making his quality of life significantly degraded. Then you get put on a waiting list. Yeah, if it's like a liver something.
Yeah, that was a poor example. But I get you get the gist of it. It's like, well, I'm gonna need to pay for it out of my own pocket, so. better start, doing the hard yards now and be able to do that when the time comes.
Yeah. I wanted to say and get you guys' opinion on whether, so it seems, from my perspective, it seems like financial literacy is probably going down generally across the board, but more than ever, it's probably more important. It's probably more important than ever. I think about our parents' generation where you didn't really you could just have money in the bank, like work one job and just money in the bank and don't do anything, and you're going to turn out fine with like the population that was supporting your superannuation was sorted, and I don't know if it applies. I feel like everything's a bit more squeezed these days, and you need to hustle a bit more. I don't think you can just get away with. In terms of even the dollar value of the wages compared to housing is like it's completely different now. The housing is more expensive.
Yeah.
So you have to. So yeah, money's harder to keep, and it's worth less, I think, now. So you need to hustle it a bit better.
Yeah, look.
What do you guys reckon?
I don't know. It's tough to say. I know it's easy to say, like, and people have these rose-tinted glass of views of the past. Where like, back in my day,
you could have one income, mother could look after the kids.
Yeah, but
home.
then I hear of these stories of massive turmoil. So I think people love to flip it one way or another depending on the context of the conversation. Well, back in my day, I had to start roofing when I was 14. I didn't get the luxury of going through school or just with a part-time job. I had to go straight, and back in my day, but then in another one they'll be like, but back in my day it was so much. So I don't know. I
think you can give and take from the past and the present. Like you could say most people now, to be able to afford a home, it's much easier if you're in a relationship, you have two incomes, you're sharing expenses, or if you're married, it's all pulled together, as opposed to someone who's single having to do it on their own. But then if you look at it from in the past, like you could say, well, families were able to live off one income and the mother would look after the kids, so they didn't pay for day. Like there's things you can take and give and take, but then the lifestyle might not have been the same.
That's a great point.
Here, sure, things become expensive, but like for most people, like we can have the ability to go out and socialize from time to time with our friends if we want to, or you could save all your coin and bank it up and just stay at home. Like, I mean, I don't know if that's the best.
No,
example.
it is.
Yeah.
I think that's a great example. Like the quality of lifestyles that we're living. I'm sure there'll be people who disagree, but I think it's pretty clear cut. Like the quality of the lifestyles that we're living are far more abundant than they used to be. If we think of the 1950s family, if the mother, looking after the kids, it would have been a very minimalist lifestyle that didn't come with many thrills or perks compared to, the lifestyles that we're living today, whether that's materially or events and, travel and things like that. I think, and with things like, as you say, and I think it is factual how like the income to like house price ratio or whatever is increased, like you need to earn more. But as I say, that's still correlated to that point that I made before, where there's enough people who have enough money to drive the prices up. That's what I mean. There's enough people who must be essentially doing way better than they used to be if that income, whatever the multiples increase, because that means that they're earning way. Yeah, like
so you're saying like the market will just self-correct itself.
I think so, to an extent. I think we're probably one of. I think maybe this is an explanation for it. Yes, I think the gap between the have and the have-not is growing. I still personally believe that the have-nots, the quality of life has been raised for them, generally speaking. If you think of, there's a lot of people, we're not talking about people who are really living on the street. If we're talking about they're in government housing, state housing, they might be on a benefit or have low-paying job. They probably have a TV, color TV, a cell phone.
State houses at the moment are being brand new ones are being rolled out, and they're brand new townhouses, just as good as a lot of the other townhouses around.
Yeah, but relative to the have, the gap between that has increased. And if we take even just when I say the haves, if we take middle class and say higher end of middle class, these beautiful brand new houses, double or triple glazed and well insulated, heat pumps, leather furniture, and just the ability to go on holidays and stuff like that. That's an exponentially greater lifestyle than I think people had 50 and certainly 100 years ago.
Well, you could even just argue that having internet.
It's like, and even that's what I say. Most people, even most of the have-nots, I think, will have internet nowadays. And that's what I mean.
Or
so
at
I
least
think,
access to it.
a library
capacity.
Yeah,
because effectively with the internet, it's endless opportunity.
it is.
So whether it's how you utilize your capacity for it,
So,
it's like I think. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but like
no.
being a kid, like growing up, I think I remember it was like Microsoft Encarta, which is like the encyclopedia. I was like, wow, this is mind blowing. Like I can look up this and that and this and that. It's like, well, that's nothing in comparison to what you can look up now. You've got YouTube at your fingertips. You figure out your car's breaking down. For now, you could probably, for most things, you could learn yourself and save a bit of money doing that sort of thing. Or just there's so many things you could learn: how to cook, how to code, how to do this, X, Y, Z. You wouldn't have had that same opportunity in the past.
The internet must have completely changed financial literacy in the way that you can learn anything easily yourself.
I think a good analogy for like the situation we're in is like, if you think the floor of the, whatever we're going to call it, the financial floor, the quality of life floor has been, say it was down here in the 50s. I think it's now here. It's moved up a bit, but the ceiling has gone from here to here, and so yes, there is a bigger gap.
Yeah.
But I do believe for the most part, those at the bottom are living better lives, even though they might not be great lives, are living better lives than they were 50 years ago. But the people, the higher up you go, they're living exponentially better lives than we used to. And I think, as I say that, like that's what I was trying to. It's kind of hard to put into words with like the market, how that gap between income and house prices. That means there's like there's a number of people are earning exponentially more than they used to. But then you still have a portion down here who they're only earning a wee bit more than they used to. And so yes, you do. Yes, there is this a growing gap, and I know a lot of people don't like that.
When you just say the growing gap, your mind like intuitively goes to like a like it's like shrinking.
People are
going
they used to be
going down, and the people at the top are going up. But
it's really this is going up a little bit. This is going up heaps. So. Yes, the gap's getting bigger, but I do believe the people at the bottom are also getting better. It's just not at the exponential rate that the people, as I say, the higher up you go, the more
up.
Yeah, the higher up you go, the bigger that contrast gets. Like if you think of the way, if we say a lifestyle of someone that's got $10 million, the lifestyle that they can live today compared to what they could live 50 or 100 years ago, the quality of the housing, the mansion that they can build, the resources they can have, the cars that they can, whatever it is, those are that private jet. Probably, I don't know if you, maybe not, if with 10 mil, you might not have enough money for a private jet, maybe to charter it, fly first class, all those things. That quality is, exponentially better than it used to be. And as I say, that's reflected, I think, in the housing market. There's a significant enough portion of the population who are earning these exponentially higher wages than they used to be, which then gives them that money to drive house prices up because they're willing to pay that much for a house. But the problem is that the lower down you go, those incomes are only going up 5 or 10% rather than 100%, 200%, these people. Because if you look worldwide, the number of millionaires is increasing exponentially. So there is a growing portion of the population that has grown wealth exponentially.
No, you got to write the first down.
Just in reference to the internet as well, I think it was one of the important that it was stressed across most papers at university, where the problem now is obviously it hasn't been that long where the internet's been so accessible that now we have so much information. The issue isn't finding the information, which it used to be when you were researching things. The limiting factor was finding the papers.
Yep.
Now, obviously, that's not an issue. Now the limitation is there's too much, and filtering somehow through it. And I think generally as a society, everyone's trying to, like, the whole like misinformation, fake news trend. We're all dealing with it, how to sift through and find out what's important. And in terms of financial literacy, it seems like there's so many numbers, and understanding things, like I said, on like first principle, and understanding like how the system like generally broadly works is the only way to get through it. And then you can kind of tell if these numbers are being, because numbers, like we've talked about with marketing, they can just be marketed. Like the bank made $1 billion profit, but that might be 2% profit. And so you get meaningless numbers. So understanding like how basically how capitalism works, because capitalism isn't a natural state. It's just like it's an overlay that we've decided to use, or we don't really have a choice. So understanding like generally how that system works and how the money flows around is how you do financial lit, or the best way forward.
I agree. And I think that's, again, I keep making this point, but yeah, the point about nothingness, this natural state, that's it. The natural state of your brain is not knowing anything about finances, and it's really hard to learn about. If as I say, trading is one of the examples. It's really hard to do. Well, it's simple but hard
because of the amount of information
and the ability to override human emotions, change a lot of factors, and it takes a long time to get good at it. But most people, they want that quick hit. They think, I should be able to double my money in the stock market in a year or two. It should be easy. If this rich dickhead John Key can do this, I should be able to do it. And they're not looking at, well, what was the process of getting there? How many years? Again, it's the classic case of the iceberg. You're only seeing the tip. Then there's the majority of the iceberg is below the sea, and that's the journey to get there. I don't think most people have an appreciation of whether it be business, finance. Obviously, business is a form of finance, but starting your own business, trading in the stock market, whatever it is, just how hard that is. They think it should be easy, but it's just so hard.
And that'll blend into the, like we were saying before, like kind of goblin, pessimistic Facebook commenting, angry people who it'll bleed into it. If you're not appreciating or even bothering to like dive deep and like actually like lay things out and seriously, rationally contemplate how long it takes for these people to grind up to 5 investment properties or whatnot. I can see how you turn into like, it's not working for me. It must be like, I tried for like 2 weeks and I didn't make double my money. What the fuck?
The good point, I think, is a lot of, particularly post-pandemic, coming out on YouTube, there are people who were pushing up stocks and say, hey, like, this is, invest in this, or I think you should invest in this. So people follow the gurus or advice of other people without doing their own personal research. So that's all well and good when things are going well, but then if something like the market turns and then all of a sudden you start having a bear market or recession, then that's when the carnage comes out, people coming with pitchforks and fire. So the best thing you can do is to do your own research. And then you're really only accountable to yourself. And then it's, if you make the mistakes, lose money, such and such, or not say blame yourself, but then it's what you do with that next. Like if you've made the mistakes, well, you can learn from those mistakes. And it's easy to say that with time. Like I think for us, yes, we've had a bit of a rough period in the markets in the past couple of years. Before that was like the big global financial crisis, but I think we were quite old enough to really understand it. It used to be like live through. I think we could kind of pick small bits of things out through my parents, but not fully understanding it. So it's easy, like when you have we've got the hindsight that we can look back and see what happened and how we can benefit from that. But when you're living in the present, it's a bit of a different ball game.
I just want to say, you mentioned, you said something that made me come to mind. A good point of thinking about
that I had
using
good points.
filtering information. from like you're talking about gurus and
Yeah,
influencers, and I
like
think
Ty Lopez.
yeah. And so while doing your own research is always good, I think we all kind of use social media influencers, gurus or whatever, as a means to filter the information. That there's so much information, so you like bank your trust. You're basically trusting in their reputation. These people have reputations. That's what they sell, right? They don't have anything. They just have followers and influence. So you're like trusting them to filter some information down to you, and that's what I think that's the best way to use influencers from our perspective, who aren't influencers. You know, you're trusting them. Like who's the guy with the tape on his nose?
Hormozy.
Yeah, we trust him that he's going to give us honest, information, honest, useful information, and he could easily just scam us with that trust, and then it's gone. But I think that's one way to disseminate all the information and filter it is by selecting people on the internet you trust. And especially with financial literacy, there's good people who oftentimes aren't as successful as the trash like glitzy Logan Pauls. But there's like real grinders underground who you've got to find.
I got a great example of that. Really, the perfect example. Have you seen Rounders?
Can't say I have. No.
Movie about poker. Matt Damon.
Mm-hmm.
There's a character in this called Joey Knish, and he's a professional poker player, but he's a real grinder. He's not playing, the World Series. He's doing essentially what I do with like sports betting.
Mm-hmm.
He's betting into small markets, small inefficient markets. So he's going to like these small card games where playing with people who are playing recreationally, and so the stakes are way lower. But he's gotten to the point, he does it methodically, and so he's never going to make $1 million in a year from it, but he's going to make it enough to eat.
Yeah,
and he knows like it. So it's boring. It's not glitzy, but Matt Damon's like this young guy. Comes in, he's learning from Joey, and then he's like, I want to be like the big guy, the World Series. And he like goes to like this bigger tournament. I think it's technically like an illegal underground tournament, but it was like with Russian mobsters or something who have lots of money and they're really good players and stuff. And he gets destroyed, like loses all his money, goes bust. And it's just a really good lesson how, and sure, there can obviously be people who can accumulate enough wealth that they can live glitzy lifestyles, but I think that's a much more aspirational or realistic goal, is to be Joey Knish, make enough money so you don't have to work a 9 to 5, so you have a bit of freedom, and focus on it's much more
find that real thin sliver of a niche. It's just enough for you.
And I think there's like a quote in that from Matt Damon after he loses all his money. Because then Edward Norton comes into it. He comes out of prison, and then they're like, let's start like trying to like go to the top again. And Edward Norton doesn't like Joe Knish because he's like, this guy's like this pathetic grinder, and Matt Damon was like, he's never had to work a real job in his life, and there's something to that. He's not living in a mansion. He's just got an apartment or whatever, but his freedom and time, he's found a way to grind out a living in a relatively easy way, a relatively easy and enjoyable way. So I think that's a really good example. So you see these Logan Pauls, the glitz and the glamour, and obviously that is possible, but you're much better to look at a grinder. I can't think of a great example off the top of my head, but there's a lot of like super. I follow like in the trading space.
Just people who tell
they're not millionaire, or they might even be millionaire traders, but they're not glitz and glamour traders. They have like 2,000 followers on Twitter, but they're the real grinders. That's the real nitty gritty. Where you're probably going to get way better advice. So I think just really lower your expectations for the most part, and
lower your expectations, but increase them for the type of people you're taking advice from.
I think just look to way more. And as I say, that doesn't mean
grounded.
That the glitz and the glamour isn't possible, but as a first step, be looking to this isn't actually going to be this overnight easy thing. I start this one drop shipping store and become a millionaire. No, it's going to be a grind. Like when I was running an e-commerce business and I was grinding out 30, 40, 50K a year. It's, getting up to the point where it's equivalent, of an okay median job in New Zealand, but came with a lot more freedom. So that's what I mean. Everyone, if you're thinking business, e-commerce, you're thinking of, the, massive $1 million in a year, whatever, one product, where you should be thinking, can I just grind out this relatively monotonous, boring, where I have, selling blood pressure monitors and bark collars for dogs and Wi-Fi extenders, and it's really not glamorous at all, and it's fairly monotonous, but it's pretty liberating to have your own autonomy.
Cool.
And there's people out there in the business space on the internet like that, where you'll see these true grinders who aren't these one hit wonders. Because I think that's a big problem with a lot of these gurus, is because you can get lucky. Like, you can catch the trend and blow up one store, one product, but that doesn't mean that you can do it again. There are people who get lucky, and then they use that as like, well, now I can teach everyone. And you're going to get that with a lot of these Shopify gurus when they don't realize how they time, right place, just fortunate rather than, as I say, you'll find the reality with a lot of like businesses as boring, monotonous, not exciting, as it can be. But,
might have to wrap it up there. We are getting over time, but was there any final things you wanted to say, Daniel?
Nah, got everything out.
Yeah. Another successful council.
Yeah, I think, as I say, just coming back to, wealth, owning houses, human rights, that sort of stuff. As I say, it's aspirational, don't get me wrong. Hopefully we can build a society where everyone can be wealthy, and everyone can own their own house or something like that, or live in rent a house that they want to rent, sort of thing. But if you're living in a flat, an apartment, a house that you don't own at the moment, or you're living with your parents, as I am, just realize like that's so much better than how the majority of humans have lived for history. As I say, like, imagine how shit it would be living in a mud hut or in a cave. So it's not ideal that you live with your parents and you don't own your own house, but it's a decent house, utilities, it's.
You saying so you're basically saying live in gratitude and an abundance mindset, you dirty
I think
hippie?
So, yeah. I think so, yeah. Because I think you get so much further that way. I say have lofty aspirations.
Yeah.
Wanting to own your own house, wanting to be a millionaire. That's what I got. Lofty, but also appreciate the circumstances that you're in. Because unless you are one of those ones who are living truly rough, it's probably not so bad. I imagine for the few people who are listening to us, we all have decent living conditions, whether we own the house or not, renting, flatting, whatever it is. It's probably, by historical standards, we're in the 0.01%.
I think as well, just you've got to enjoy the process as it comes. Like, it's easy to be future thinking, but it takes time, and there will be struggles and things you have to deal with throughout the journey of whatever you're doing or what you want to succeed. But like, you'd want to look back on it if you were to become successful, and at least have enjoyed it, and not look at it as like, man, this like was a period where it just sucked. Like, at least you can enjoy the fruits of your own labor.
Yeah.
But I think we should probably wrap it up there. We've gone a bit over time.
Sick.
So I think, in the wise words of Drake, we started from the bottom. Now we're here.
All right, we can finish on Drake.
All right.
Nice.
Peace out,
Later.
everyone.
Peace.